Hi everyone, so in this video we're going to look at another game from FIDE Online Chess Olympiad 2020. Obviously we all know that Team India has won gold for the first time in the history of chess Olympiads, which is a great thing indeed, jointly with Team Russia, because of some kind of global internet outage interrupted some of the games during the finals, and because of that the issues are still going on around the globe, the tweets and retweets by the Russian players. Also, Team Armenia is not happy with the decision made by the FIDE officials, and they think that it's kind of unfair and partiality done by the FIDE organization. But what happened. We cannot do anything. No one is responsible specifically for this incident, and it's a kind of act of God, you can say. But obviously the decision can be arguable. You can argue that this is not the right way of resolving the problem, but my point is we cannot overlook the fact that Team India played an amazing game of chess during the tournament and brought victory to the country. All of the 12 players delivered their A games and helped in winning the gold medal for the team. And the games are really well, and this game is also one of those many good games played by the Indian players. The game we are talking about is from round 3 of day 1. India was fighting against Uzbekistan, and Harikrishna Pentala from Team India was playing against Nodirbek Yakubboev from Team Uzbekistan. And he played an amazing game of chess in the Slav Defense, completely forced Nodirbek to the defeat. We are going to see that amazing masterpiece. So without further delay, let us dive into the game. Here Nodirbek is playing with the white pieces and Harikrishna with the black pieces, and white begins the game with d4. Black replies with d5, the queen's pawn opening, and we are looking at c4, the queen's gambit type of line, but black here goes for c6, the Slav defense on the board. And well, the idea is simple. The e6 will block the light square bishop, and because of that, instead of going for e6, black chooses to go for c6. That is the purpose of Slav defense, which is to keep the light square bishop active. But at the same time, black needs to keep in mind that the king side is really inactive, and black needs to show some activity as soon as possible. These are part of standard theories, and we are not going deep into that, at least in this video. However, white here goes for knight f3, going for development, knight f6 by black, showing some kingside activity and also development, and e3 by white, so that the pawn captures and bishop captures, the bishop will enjoy the activity, and e3 actually activates the light square bishop. That's it. Okay, so here black is really willing to go for e6, activating the dark square bishop, but that will actually block the light square bishop, which will not match with the basic purpose of playing c6 at the very beginning. So before going for e6, black chooses to go for bishop f5, then only black can go for e6 on the very next move. Knight c3 by white, going for development, and then only e6. Now black has this amazing and beautiful looking triangular type of pawn structure. And if you look at the pawn structure, the pawns, all of the pawns are sitting on the light squares, and so the light square bishop is actually a bad bishop for black. So black will try to exchange that bishop for any of the white pieces as soon as possible, so that black can enjoy full activity over the board. White goes for knight h4 with the idea of attacking the bishop. So obviously after knight captures, pawn captures, the pawn structure will be really messed up for black. Obviously black does not want that. Black can go for bishop g6, but instead of going for that, black here first goes for bishop e4. So obviously if knight captures, d captures, then this pawn will be really annoying for white for the rest of the game. The knight is also defending that. So instead of going for that, the main purpose of playing e4, which is very much on trending nowadays, this bishop e4 on the Slav defense line, the actual idea is provoking white to play f3, which will actually weaken white's king side. At the same time, it will take away one of the retreating squares of this knight. Now this knight cannot retreat to f3 because that is blocked, and because of that reason this knight is also kind of doing nothing for white at the edge of the board. So white will also try to get rid of that knight as soon as possible for the bishop maybe, and both the sides will be happy. That is also a part of standard theory. However, the bishop is under attack, so bishop g6, the only good square for the bishop to retreat. Queen b3 attacking the b7 pawn, so queen c7 defending it, at the same time creating a cannon which is looking on the king side of white here. Bishop d2 by white, activating the bishop, also preparing to go for some long side castle here, and black goes for bishop e7, activating the bishop. This dark square bishop is however very much important for black, looking at the pawn structure obviously, and now black is preparing to go for a short castle. So white goes for knight into g6, h into g6, and it may seem like that the pawn structure is messed up and black's king side is little bit weak. But looking at the pawn structure of white and also the activity of the white pieces over the board, it is not that much easy to attack black's king side, because the castle, the pawn structure and the overall king side is looking really solid for black. So it's not that much easy for white to go for some attack on the king side. However, white chooses to go for long side castle, and with this the game is becoming too much aggressive, because it will turn into a race between two of the sides. The side will reach his opponent first will win the game. That is the main thing behind the opposite side castlings. So black starts the attack with d into c4, bishop into c4, and then b5. Black is trying to push the white pieces as much as possible, so that black can bring his pieces over the queen side and try to attack the king. So the bishop is under attack, so bishop needs to retreat to d3 and a6 now. Now this pawn structure is also good for black, and now this bishop is looking really strong. Now black will try to bring the knight to d7 and b6, which will be really helpful for black. So white goes for a4. Obviously, if pawn captures, knight captures, the pawn structure on queen side will be messed up, and also this knight will be active. So the purpose is to mess up the queen side pawn structure. Obviously, black will not take it. Instead, black goes for knight b7 with the idea of bringing the knight on the queen side. So king b1, bringing the king to a safer square. However, black here goes for short castle, ensuring king's safety over the board. Rook c1 now, bringing the rook to the semi-open file for white, which is the c5, and black here goes for c5. Now attacking the queen side and attack the center and open the queen side for black to attack. So here obviously from this point the moves by Harikrishna will be such that the moves by white more or less will be forced. Now suppose white here goes for d into c5. That is not good for white, because black can go for knight into c5, forking the queen and the bishop. And suppose white here goes for knight e2 with the idea of pinning the knight against the queen with the rook. That is not a good move by white, because after knight into b3, rook into c7, picking up the queen, just when white is about to capture the undefended bishop here, black will go for knight into d2 with a check. Now it is not possible for white to capture the piece, so white needs to defend the check here. So suppose king c2 and then bishop b4, defending the knight, and everything is set for black here. Suppose knight c3 with the idea of preventing the bishop from defending the knight. Then also bishop into c3, rook into c3, and knight c4. Now this knight is protected and everything is set for black, and also the pieces are more active from black's perspective. So it's kind of forced for white to capture not d into c5 but a into b5, and after a into b5 we can see that the a file is really open. And now this queen is gonna come on a7, and this battery is gonna be a little bit problematic for white. That is really evident, whereas white has no counterplay for black over the king side. However, the game is looking interesting, so let us see what happened after this. Knight into b5, white goes for attacking the queen, but simply queen b7. Now this knight is pinned against the white queen here. King c2. Now white king is feeling really uncomfortable over the queen side. Now white's idea is to somehow go for the king side, because the king side is looking safer for the white king, but it takes a lot of moves, and it's not sure that whether white will be successful to bring the king on the king side after this. However, rook a b8 now putting a lot of pressure over the b file. King d1, white is now sticking with the plan of bringing the king to the king side. However, e5 here, also now attacking the center and opening up the position on the king side also. Now obviously if d captures on c5, knight c5 forking the queen and the bishop, the same idea that we have seen earlier, so that is not possible. But suppose d into e5, that is also not possible, because knight into e5 attacking the bishop, which is protecting the knight here. So bishop e2, and then after queen d7 pinning the bishop against the king e1, and then c4 attacking the queen here. Bishop into c4, obviously white needs to defend the knight. But after knight into c4, rook into c4, rook b5, the rook b5, the rook is defended by the queen, and now white is down a piece. So it is also not possible for white to capture the pawn, and that's why I just gave the title that most of the moves are forced here. We can sense that, right? However, queen a2, removing the queen from the pin so that this knight can move finally. And here black goes for e4, attacking the bishop. Now this bishop is under attack, but at the same time f into e4 is not possible, because after the exchanges knight into e4, bishop into e4, queen into e4, now the king is obviously vulnerable. The queen is gonna come on g4, so knight c3 trying to attack the queen, but queen g4 check, king c2, and then after c into d4, e into d4, this queen is gonna take the pawn on d4, and all the pieces of white is really paralyzed. The knight, the rook, both the rooks, the queen is doing nothing, and the rook is gonna come on c8, and it is almost gone for white, because white has nothing left to come with some kind of counter attack on black's king, whereas black has so much activity over the board. So it's really bad for white here. So instead of capturing the pawn, it's also kind of forced to move the bishop, so bishop e2, but then comes e into f3, trying to deflect the bishop from defending the knight. Obviously if bishop into f3, queen into b5, now white is down a piece. That is not possible, so the only move is g into f3. So see how the moves are kind of forced by Harikrishna Pentala here. And here black goes for queen c6 with the idea of rook b7 and bringing the other rook to b8, doubling up the rooks over the b file here. So knight c3 trying to save the knight, and c into d4, knight into b5 again, trying to capture the pawn here. But here comes bishop c5 defending the pawn, e into d4, and black here comes up with an amazing exchange sacrifice, which is rook into b5. Obviously you are not playing for the pieces, you are playing for the king, right? So after rook into b5, bishop into b5, queen into f3 check with the threat of capturing the rook here. Obviously bishop e2 is not possible, because black is gonna capture the rook, and it's also kind of again forced to move the king. So king c2 trying to join the rooks here, but here comes bishop into d4 with the idea of bringing the rook to c8, and queen a3 with the idea of exchanging the queens here. And black here goes for queen b7 with the threat of capturing the bishop. Bishop into d7, knight into d7, getting rid of the bishop here. But here after king b1, black here puts the final nail on the coffin. So here is the good chance for you to pause the video and try to find the best move and the winning move for black here. Yes, it is a queen e4 check and game over. Obviously, a king cannot move to a1 because rook a8 with the threat of capturing the queen. White is gonna lose his queen, but even white tries to go for bishop a5, then knight c5 with the idea of knight b3, forking the king and the bishop, and it's okay, maybe white can go for king a2, but then after knight b7 attacking the bishop, there is no way for white to defend the bishop here. And also after queen e4 check, king c2, obviously the idea is queen into h1. Obviously if king moves, then again rook a8 and it's game over. If somehow bishop c1, then queen e4 pinning the rook, and now this rook is coming on c8, and there is nothing for white to do, on no active counterplay for white here. So here on this position, in this position on move 31, Nodirbek Yakubboev resigns and Harikrishna Pentala wins the game for Team India. An amazing game by Harikrishna Pentala in the Slav defense line, and really appreciable. So with this, we are coming to the end of the video. At the end, at the same time, end of the game. Maybe I'll be coming up with a few more games from Online Olympiad 2020. Before that, just stay tuned to the channel. I'm taking your leave. See you next time.